out to the bench fans and welcome back to another episode. Today we are joined with one of the best newsbreakers in the competition, one of the best journalists in the AFL, featuring on Footy Classified, Talking Footy, and the Footy Show, Mr. Sam McCLURE. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
We want to do a speed trade rumours. So
Okay.
me and you, we're going to drop some of the names in the trade talk speculation. And I want you, if possible, just if you know, to say which club's in the race for the player, who's leading the race, and what is the contract length and salary on the table, probably by the best suitor, if possible. If you don't know, then that's all good. But
Let's give us a situation.
yeah, and if these players are staying, or if you know any other additional information, then feel free to say that. But we'll get
Okay, I'll give you the best to my knowledge information, but just so that all your listeners are aware, this is subject to change. I'm not saying it.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'll kick it off. Ben Brown.
Yeah, Ben Brown's offered 3 years by $750 at North Melbourne at the start of the year. He wanted a fourth year. North Melbourne got the shits and pulled that offer after he declined it. So he's now looking for a new home. His management is shopping him around to other clubs. They've contacted Hawthorn, who have said no thanks, Collingwood, who have said no thanks, Gold Coast, who are considering whether it will help or hinder Ben King. I think he'll end up either at Gold Coast, Essendon, or Melbourne, probably for a third pick.
Third round pick?
Yeah, because North Melbourne have played their hand really early, so clubs know that they don't have to give up heaps to get him. And he's out of contract, so going to the draft.
That could be an absolute steal, but
yeah,
interesting.
All right. Joe Danaher, what's going to get that one done at the line?
Yeah, so he'll get to Brisbane. Whether Essendon match the offer is dependent on what the offer is from Brisbane, and also how contingent their offer is on incentives. So I'm trying to say this without being too complicated. Only guaranteed money comes into the compensation figuration by the AFL. So if Brisbane offer him 5 years at $400,000, but if he kicks 60 goals and plays every game, he can earn $800,000. Only the $400,000 goes to the compensation. So if whatever Brisbane's deal is gives Essendon a first round pick, which will be pick 7, I think Essendon will take that personally. If it's anything less than that, they'll match and force a trade. But Brisbane only have pick 18 and 19. They've got Port's pick. So how will they get that done? So my gut tells me that they'll have to trade. But he'll get there.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, now we've got Brad Crouch. And since his incident, have any clubs pulled out of the race?
No, they haven't. Brad Crouch will be playing for Geelong next year.
Geelong?
For Geelong.
What are the
How
figures
certain
there?
are you?
Well, everything's subject to change, but Geelong's interest has not waned at all. He doesn't want to live in Melbourne. He doesn't want to be in the spotlight. He's sick of living in the fishbowl of Adelaide with the attention that he gets. Sydney have shown some interest, and obviously, that would be away from the limelight as well. But he's being courted heavily by the Cats. He's got a good relationship with Patrick Dangerfield. I would think he'll be joining the Cats on a long-term deal.
Do you know what that contract figure is or the length at all? Or
no, I don't. I would assume it'll be 4+ years. I have no idea what the money
that's fine. Yeah.
Do you reckon you can rule out 100% Richmond in that race for Crouch?
Never rule out the Tigers in anything because they're capable of a steal. But I don't think the Tigers particularly need a Brad Crouch, to be honest. But he's a free agent, so it always helps you when you get someone for free. But he won't want to live in Melbourne, so Geelong will be way in front.
All right. That's interesting for the Cats fans. Something to get excited about. Next one, Zach Merritt. What's his story?
Zach's really interesting. Not happy at Essendon. Not happy for a range of reasons. One being that he was kicked out of the leadership group. Second being the direction of the club. I think he wants to see more direction from the new coach, Ben Rutten. It was a bit of a disaster, really, the handover with John Worsfold. I just think it was messy. Has been actively seeking what a trade away from Essendon this year would look like, but his management won't ask for a trade. He's got a year left on his deal. So Essendon would, demand something ridiculous for him, and he knows that. Mm-hmm. But Essendon are trying to get him to re-sign on a long-term deal. He's currently saying no, and my gut feel will be that he'll go into next season as the highest profile restricted free agent. And if Essendon don't improve, both environmentally and on the ladder quickly, I think he'll leave Essendon next year.
Wow.
All right. Wow.
And I think that Carlton would be leading the race for him.
Carlton.
All right.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Now we've got this next one is Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah, I can't work this one out. I listened to him on radio in July when he said, once the contract freeze, because of everything going on with COVID, was up, that he'd re-sign quickly. His management just wants more money. He was earning close to 1.5 million this year because he's a back-ended deal, and the players had taken a 50% pay cut. So he's lost 750 grand, right? Which is obviously, out of his control. His management probably feels that he deserves to get some of that back. I think he wants close to $1 million on a long-term deal. Giants simply can't afford that. They're over $2 million over the salary cap for next year already. Now, they've helped with the fact that Aidan Corr's leaving, and Haitley, was it Haitley? Yeah, Haitley's going back to Adelaide, but he's earning nothing, so that doesn't really help. So here's the situation with Cameron. He either re-signs at somewhere between 800 and 900 grand for a long-term deal and becomes a one-club player. That would mean that GWS will have to lose one of their inside mids. They'll have to lose Kelly or Taranto or Hopper. They just can't afford to keep them all. If he leaves and goes to, I know that he's been heavily linked to Geelong. If he leaves and goes to somewhere in Victoria, then the Giants will be able to keep their mids. My money would still be with Jeremy Cameron staying at GWS.
All right.
Thank you.
Zach Williams, can you lock him in at the Blues?
Oh, yep, done deal. Yep, earning a long-term contract, somewhere between 5 and 7 years. So it's the most important thing is that he's been traded. He's been lured as a midfielder, not as a halfback. That's why they went
really?
Adam Sard as well. So you'll see Sard and Doherty and Williamson on the halfback for the Blues, and you'll see Williams, if he's fit and ready, lining up next to Paddy Cripps round one.
Wow. What's their contract figure as well? Do you know?
It's over 800 grand a year.
Over.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. For 7 years, you said 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the length is, but he did want 7 years when other teams were talking to him. I know that when other clubs asked about him, his manager wanted 7 years. Whether he got that at the Blues, I'm not sure. The Giants, by the way, everyone talks about how much money that is. The Giants would have paid him $750 if they could have. They would have paid him $750 if he'd said I'm staying, and they would have moved on other players. That's how highly they rate him. They rate him in their best 6 players.
Wow.
Yeah, no doubt he is.
Adam Sard now to the Blues. What's the contract details there? And what will get the trade done, you think?
Yeah, so a 5-year deal worth about 650 grand a year. It's good money for a halfback flanker.
Plus the car?
What's that?
The car?
Yeah, I heard Tom Brown say that the president had worked in a car. That's fascinating. That's true. It's like old school. We'll give you 650 grand a year. Oh, by the way, there'll be a Mercedes in your driveway.
So no truth to that?
No, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, Carlton, I think, is still sponsored by Hyundai, aren't they?
Yeah,
so
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
His family lives just off Brunswick Road. So, near Royal Parade, near where Carlton is. His next door neighbour is Ange Christou. So, there's a lot of...
Wow.
I heard they're good mates. Yeah, we just had him on the show, Ange. Yeah, I heard they're good mates.
Yeah, there's a lot of Carlton links with Sard and his family. And what will get a trade done? Well, Essendon is steaming. Adrian Dodoro, their list manager, we know, has a record for driving a hard bargain. So I would think that Essendon will ask for pick 7 and Paddy Dow, or pick 7 and Mitch McGovern. I don't know. They'll start for a lot. Gut feel is that he's worth probably about pick 12. So I reckon pick 7 will end up getting it done.
I would say in the teens a pick, but yeah.
Yeah, so I agree. Somewhere around there.
Jared Pollock, do you reckon he'll end up at a 4th club?
Yeah. My gut tells me that he'll stay. I just can't see... I can't see a club... I mean, I know he's been linked to Melbourne. North would have to pay a lot of his salary. He's on a lot of money. He's on 700 grand. So North would have to pay a lot of his salary if he was to leave. I just personally can't see that happening. And North don't have anyone to pay. So, his money becomes less relevant because you have to pay 95% of the cap. it's like, yes, he's on a lot of money, but it's not as though they're getting Jeremy Cameron and Josh Kelly through the door.
Got to pay
So,
someone.
Yeah, I'm not ruling out him leaving, but my gut would be him staying.
Okay. Jack Gunston, there's been a few murmurs about him going to the Pies. Any update on that?
Yeah, I think the Pies are genuinely interested. It'll just come down to whether Alistair Clarkson and Graham Wright, who've got so much experience in this field, feel like whatever the value they're getting back through the door is worth it. Like, what's a 28-year-old Jack Gunston who just won your BNF worth? I mean, people are saying a second-round pick. He's got to be worth more than that. He's 28. He feels like he's been around for 20 years, but he's still got some good footy left in him, and he's exactly what Collingwood need. So, if I was the Hawks, I wouldn't be letting my best and fairest winner walk out the door for anything less than a good first-round pick.
Yeah, definitely.
And by the way, just remember with picks this year, no one's seen anyone play. So
exactly,
there'll be 5 guys in the top 20 that play less than 10 games, I reckon. Like, because you just don't know. Like, they'll be guessing, and there'll be guys picked in the 50s that will play 300 games. You know, like, and people will say that happens every year. Yes, it does, but this is more of a lottery than it usually is.
Tim Taranto, will he end up home in Melbourne?
I don't think so. Leon Cameron loves him. He's a best and fairest winner in a grand final year. He's a good Vic boy, but he loves it up there. He probably, unlike Hopper, I think Hopper's a really good player, but Taranto probably runs and tackles maybe a little bit more.
I would agree on that.
And he's a bigger body. So, he's got a year left on his deal. There's no way they're letting him go.
All right.
Sean Higgins.
I think Sean Higgins will be playing at Geelong. Yeah. I think they'll give him a year deal, and the Cats will just keep topping up, keep adding good players in. I mean, look at Geelong right now. They should be – they're old. Yeah, they should be playing in a prelim in a couple of weeks. And they could be adding Sean Higgins and Brad Crouch. I mean, not bad. They'll probably lose Ablett. Does Taylor go on, Henderson, that sort of stuff. So some old guys will go out.
What's the contract there for Higgins, do you know? Or?
No, I think he's got a year left on his deal at North, so he'll want an extra year. So I think 2 years at...
Yeah, wouldn't it be more than 2 years?
2 years at somewhere between 500 and 600, I assume.
Yeah. Now, Sam, what's the story of Ollie Wines? We've been hearing a lot of talk about him and his links to Victorian clubs. Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, he definitely tried to leave Port Adelaide last year, and Essendon and Carlton were the ones that were looking into him. He's had sort of an indifferent couple of years, hasn't he, Ollie? Because he was sort of named captain, then he broke his shoulder wakeboarding from memory, missed a bit of footy. People were a bit shitty about, whether he should have been wakeboarding or not, which I think is ridiculous. Like, you should be able to live their life. He grew up next to a lake. And then he's had a pretty good year, I reckon. And he had a good final the other night. So, look, he's on a lot of money. He's on more than 800 grand. And last year, I think clubs were worried about whether they should spend that sort of money. I would think he will stay.
Okay. A few more to go through. I'm hearing murmurs about this one on a few posts around Facebook and stuff. Clayton Oliver, is it true he wants out of Melbourne or nothing on that?
It's true that Clayton Oliver isn't happy at Melbourne. And I think that if Clayton Oliver was out of contract right now, I think he would ask for a trade.
Yeah.
But he's not. And a bit similar to Zach Merritt. I think that he's got a contract. There's no way that Melbourne would trade him with a year left to go. A bit like Merritt. It's weird, these two. They're both unhappy. They're both, I think, entertain the idea of trying to get to Carlton this year. But it's too messy. It's not going to happen. But to watch this space with both of them, I mean, they're both still not happy at the end of next year and they're out of contract, then look out. But no, I think he'll stay in Melbourne. I don't think you'll see him do what Jack Mahoney did and sign a 5-year deal anytime soon, but he'll be there this year.
Yeah, for sure.
Isaac Smith, what's happening with him?
Isaac Smith I think he signed a 1-year deal last year, so out of contract, I think. The Bulldogs were sniffing around last year for some outside pace. I think the Demons are sniffing around this year. Sort of comes down to he'll probably want a 2-year deal. He's in his 30s, but he's been unbelievably durable, misses very little footy. And you've got to remember the way that he plays, because he's an outside runner, he hasn't been crashed and bashed into like
his body's looking good.
Yeah, so his body's great. He's the best runner at the club. He'd be one of the best runners in the league. It comes down to the Hawks. What are they getting in the door if they let him go? Because he's a good player at his best, and he's a great player at his best. Yeah, I think that one's delicately poised. I think if he goes anywhere, my money would be on him going to the Demons. But if you put a gun to my head and asked, I reckon he'll stay.
Stay. Okay. Jack Silvani.
Yeah, really.
Big one. Yeah.
Really interesting one. And there's a lot of politics at play here because his dad was sacked. His brother's just been delisted, so he's the last Silvani left. He's been told by the coach that he's not a midfielder, and he's obviously behind Curnow, Mackay and McGovern as a forward. So where's he going to play? Got a year left on his deal, loves the club, bleeds for Carlton, wants to have success at Carlton, but also wants to play and wants to see him in their long-term plans. I don't know of any other clubs that have asked about him. I think he'd be perfect somewhere like Sydney, where he could just play as an inside mid, learn from Parker and Kennedy for a couple of years, build up his tank and his body. Doesn't look like he's going to get that opportunity at Carlton.
Do you think he's midfielder though?
Yeah, I mean, he tagged Fife a year ago and shut him down, and basically that role won Carlton the game over in the West. I honestly don't know what's going to happen there. I don't think that he'll ask for a trade. I think he'll only leave if the club forces him to.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, yeah. Cockatoo from Geelong.
Yeah, it looks like he'll be at Brisbane next year. They've been working on him for a while, and just one of those players that has so much ability and talent, hasn't been able to get on the park. So probably just wants a fresh start, I would think.
Yeah.
Alex Witherden.
Alex Witherden. Really interesting one. It's sort of hard to fathom that he's not in their best team. But, with Starcevic and some of the other young guys coming on so well, he just hasn't been able to get in the team. Beautiful kick of the footy. I think there'll be Victorian clubs asking the question come the end of the year. We've got a spot for you here if you want to play every week. It's hard to leave a good club, but it's also hard playing in the twos every week.
Yeah, exactly right.
Now, this is the one that I think that deserves a spot in the best 22. Peter Wright.
Yeah.
What's the story on him?
I just think that the Gold Coast are shopping him around, trying to find him a new home. Hasn't been much interest.
Good trade, mate.
High draft pick. I think the knock on him has been that he doesn't work potentially as hard as he should, but that's often a knock for the young guys that are big, because it's harder for them to develop their tank and they take a bit longer. My view on him is that he should be a ruckman and should make himself into a ruckman. I think he's probably a little bit slow to be a key forward, given that he's not a dominant mark like a Max or Ben King is. Hasn't been any takers yet for him or
interesting, yeah.
Or the other Gold Coast son inside mid, whose name has escaped me. That's not out of contract. He's been linked with. It'll come to me, but no takers for Peter Wright yet.
Okay, and this is the very last one. I'm intrigued to know. Matt Kennedy from the Blues yet to re-sign and was sort of on the outer this year. Any news on that front?
Yeah, well, it's sort of weird because he was on the outer, but he wasn't. Every time he played well, and then he kept getting injured, and I think he's in the games that he played, I thought he had his best year. He was taking marks overhead. He looked strong in the contest. He's exactly what the Blues need, like another inside mid. They just need him and Setterfield to come on.
Mm-hmm.
I would think he'll stay.
Yep.
Rightio. So, any other surprise trade rumours lurking around the studio, or
not yet?
Any big fishes for us? Or?
Stay tuned.
All right. All right. So, get stuck into some specific players from the ones that we mentioned. You talked about Sard. So he chose Blues why was it he chose Blues? Was it because of that connection he had living next door, or just so closely to the Blues training ground, or what made him choose Carlton and leave Essendon?
Yeah, I think they just made a really good pitch to him, and they talked about I think the culture that they've developed at Carlton with bringing the likes of Eddie Betts back, to help with the younger guys, has really helped. Clearly, Brad Lloyd, the head of footy, and the new list boss, Nick Austin, have done a mountain of work on him. And, they obviously saw a window where Essendon had just become a place where he didn't want to be. And so I think that a lot of Carlton people think that they're on the upturn next year with Charlie Curnow coming back. And, Cripps had a pretty bad year, and, they still sort of were in the hunt for the 8-8. So, it's interesting as to why Carlton's suddenly becoming a destination club. I guess we'll have to wait and see whether it comes to fruition or not.
Yeah, Essendon champion of the game, Matthew Lloyd, came out and said, such a proud club, such a proud club. This is one of the saddest days, I think, that I've ever been involved with in regards to Joe Danaher requesting his trade, wanting out of Essendon. Can you fill us in the bombshell that happened at that club and that connection that Joe Danaher has with Essendon, how it was on the downfall and what has come to now?
I think that there's a lot of stuff with Danaher. You got to remember, he could have picked Sydney as a 17-year-old. That his dad played footy there as well. Danaher name's pretty synonymous to Sydney. He didn't. He picked Essendon. He was a good player there for a long time. All-Australian, best and fairest winner, leading goal kicker on several occasions. And then his groin took over, and he just couldn't get on the park. And there's different issues with whether he agreed with some of the treatment that he was getting or not. And decided for him and his partner, Adele, that they'd be better off being outside the bubble of Melbourne. He's not someone that enjoys the limelight. He'd prefer to sit inside a dark pub in the back corner in Fitzroy than, go to the city and go to a rooftop bar, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
He likes his own friends, his own company, his own space. And I think there's a part of him, I don't want to speak for Joe, there's probably a part of him that didn't want to be the marquee player of a big club like Essendon, because it comes with a lot of stress, a lot of responsibility, particularly when you're injured. It's hard. And I don't think, they blocked the trade to Sydney, which I think was the wrong decision. And I don't think they did enough to sell him on why it was going to be different. And so now he's leaving for another club.
Interesting, yeah.
So, it's interesting.
Very. Sam, the last 2 questions on the trade front. So back on Jack Silvani, is it more him wanting out of Carlton or the club wanting to move him on because they don't see a spot for him?
I think it's a bit of both. I think neither of them know where his best spot is long term. Okay. So I think they need to sit down and have a discussion and work it out. And if I was Jack and they can't give me a clear answer, I'd be asking to go elsewhere. Yeah.
And lastly, overall, if there's one club you're confident on having the biggest off-season, whether it be through trade period or free agency, who would that club be? Who's the most confident you of?
Well, Carlton are going to have a big trade period. It's already started. You'd think that the Crows will be pretty active, given they've got the number 1 pick. They've got guys coming in like Hadley, and Essendon are going to be extremely active. I mean, Essendon could end up with 4 picks inside 15. So they would be my 3 biggest watchers. And then the last one, who's always active, is GWS. How are they going to move more players out to get inside the salary cap for next year is a big question for them.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, that just wraps up the trade rumours. Now, Adam and I have both recently read your article on The Age in regards to the Adelaide preseason training camp.
Yeah.
Very interesting article. You wrote about stuff that happened, such as prop guns, combat knives, players being tied to trees as teammates hurled personal abuse at them. Mate, what exactly happened on this camp? Was this all true, or did you guys who did you speak to get this information?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the players were happy to talk to me based on the fact that they remained anonymous, because a lot of people remain really hurt as to what happened on that camp. You could see the capitulation of the club that transcribed over the forthcoming years, gone for a club that played in a grand final to a club that won the wooden spoon in 3 seasons. So it's not all down to that camp, but I think that camp broke a lot of the trust and a lot of the bonds between the players and the club.
Mass exodus too of players.
Yeah, a lot of players have left. You've seen what's happened with the likes of Eddie Betts, who was a beacon of that club. I think it's really sad. I don't think they took responsibility for it early enough. I don't think the AFL ever took responsibility for it. Thought the AFL Players Association were pretty pathetic with how they dealt with it. And here we are. Ultimately, it's the players that have suffered. The good thing for the Adelaide Crows is I think that they're finally starting to bounce back. I know they've hit rock bottom, but I think it's probably a good thing for them. It's not anything to do with Matthew Nicks. They get a new head of football in there. They've got a new assistant coach, Scotty Burns, has gone there, who's got a lot of great respect around the competition in the coaching ranks. And I think that they'll slowly start to build back up. They're a proud footy club. They just went through a bad period.
Are players still struggling with the circumstances that they experienced? Do you reckon they'll take any legal action going forward?
I couldn't guess whether they'll take legal action. I'm not sure. But they're definitely – some are still struggling with it. It never should have happened, but it did.
Yeah. Do you think it caused their downfall in 2018 after they win the grand final in 2017? And now
I think it has a lot to do with it. Yeah, I certainly don't think it helped.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty.
A question from Declan Keady. This is a funny one because I saw some random Facebook posts in some Carlton group post this because I'm a Carlton supporter. Is Jordan De Goey going to Carlton?
I don't think so. Yeah. I've heard the same rumours that you have. I think he hasn't got a manager, so his dad's doing his management stuff. I think he probably wants a good payday, Jordan.
Yeah.
He's really close with Scott Pendlebury. They've become a bit of an odd couple there, a bit like Dustin Martin and Trent Cotchin. Close with the coach. I think he'll stay.
So by getting stuck into your journalist career, how'd you get started into journalism?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. It wasn't my first preference, if I'm telling the truth. I got out of school and then I wanted to go into film. I wanted to go into acting, screenwriting, that sort of stuff. I tried out for a couple of schools, the VCA, Victorian College of the Arts, and then NIDA in Sydney. Didn't get through, and so I needed to have a job. Really, I needed to have some sort of income. So I rang around newspapers, radio stations, TV stations, just seeing if I could do any job really that I could. And I got a gig working at 3AW, which at that stage I was what's called an OB assistant, so outside broadcast. So anytime they did a broadcast from outside the studio, whether that be at the show or at a sporting game or whatever it is, a concert, I would go and they'd give me an envelope of petty cash, and if presenters ever wanted food or coffee or whatever, I'd go buy it. Like, that'd be my job. So it's not the most glamorous of jobs, but what it did is it got my foot in the door and it got me meeting people. And then when, they needed another job, when they needed someone to answer the phones in production, I did that. When they needed someone to produce a weekend show because someone, wanted to go out, I did that. And then a job in the newsroom came up. And so I took that and I was working on general news for a couple of years, doing police rounds, court rounds, that sort of stuff. And then I got into sport, which is where my passion has always been. And yeah, I just kind of gradually did more and more footy, and that's where it finished.
It's great.
Yeah, awesome to hear about that. Also, I was going to ask, journalism, obviously, it's a dream job for many. You hear a lot of journalists have a lot of passion in their field, and I just want to know, was this occupation a dream job for you? Were you growing up always wanting to get into that field, and did you have a real passion for journalism, or what was the goal there?
Yeah, I mean, separate from my passion for film, I really had a passion in telling stories, which I guess is sort of interlinked to that. Yeah. And my dad was a journalist, and so, a lot of my childhood memories are at sporting grounds or, inside the rooms of the Carlton Footy Club. When I was little, I was a pretty tall kid. I was probably the same size I am now when I was 13. So
wow.
I used to get snuck into places with my dad, pretending I was a photographer or a note taker or something like that. Back in the day where the digital world, you didn't have to have a swipe pass to get into everything. And so I I was always, so in answer to your question, I was always passionate about telling stories of other people. And I guess that gradually grew into how things are today. So yeah, I mean, doing what I'm doing at the moment, like I'm so happy to be doing it and very lucky and very privileged to be doing it. Because, there's a lot of people out there that work really hard every day to try to do this sort of stuff. And I know that it's an industry that so many people are passionate about, and you're always reminded of that, even like, yesterday with the Joe Danaher trade stuff, I think the only two stories for the Age Online that were read more were Trump getting COVID and the national budget getting announced.
Wow.
So it's huge. Yeah. It ceases to surprise me, or not surprise me, but amaze me, the passion in which people have for footy. It's crazy. It's great. Like, it's good crazy. But
everyone loves a trade rumor.
I know. It's every year.
Best time of the
year. That won't be a big story. No one's gonna, like, even last year. Like when I said that Essendon were trying to get Mason Cox, and I was like, no one's gonna care about Mason Cox, is it? And then suddenly it just blew up. It's like Essendon are trying to poach American ruckman. So it's a funny time of the year. I enjoy it. I know you guys and all the fans out there enjoy it.
Yeah,
for sure, mate.
We love it. Yeah, just on the industry, Sam, it's a tough industry to get into, especially if you're not an ex-AFL player. And you've built quite the resume up for yourself, being the best news reporter at the AFL Media Association Awards. So just how hard is it to get your foot in the door and like sit on a panel with the likes of Luke Darcy, BT, King Wayne Carey? How hard is it to get your foot in the door like that? And are you proud of how you've come and what you've achieved?
Yeah, I mean, so like the separate questions. So getting your foot in the door is hard, but at the same time, it's not as hard as some people think it is. And I get quite a lot of people reach out to me by, I've got my email address on socials, and I get quite a lot of uni students, who want a bit of advice about, how to crack into the industry. And I'm always so willing to do that because I know what it's like being 18 and being, saying, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to get in this? But the first step, it looks like the hardest, but it's actually not if you're willing to put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I guess that's the same with probably most industries and most jobs, but it's a bit more public in the media. So it's not hard with Google these days. You can find out the phone number and the email address of most people and most things, right? And you just have to be persistent. Reach out, here's who I am. I'm 18. I've just come out of school. I'm going to study journalism, or, I'm not going to study. I'm willing to do this, and this. I want to learn. I mean, now more than ever with what's happening in the world, people want stuff cheaply, so people who work for not much usually find a way in. And then once you're in, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It could be answering phones, making people coffees, whatever it is. Once you're in, then it's incumbent on you to, you're in, but it's then if you want to progress, it's incumbent on you to build relationships with people.
Of course. It's all about building relationships and networks.
That's right. Yeah. And then the second part of your question is, sitting on panels with people.
Yeah.
I always get a bit nervous, and I'm not usually a nervous person, but, like last night on Footy Classified, I'm sitting there with Matthew Lloyd, one of the greatest footballers of all time, and then Ross Lyon, one of the great modern day coaches, been to 3 grand finals. And I just always try to remind myself that I am here for a purpose, and my purpose isn't necessarily to give strong opinions about the game that I didn't play, but my purpose can be to bring information and news, and then also to host. So I think you've got to be willing, you've got to swallow your pride to a large degree in this industry and know your place in the food chain. And that's why I try to steer clear as much as I can. You might see me write one opinion piece a year if I'm really strong on something that I feel like I've got a good background in. But I feel like the more opinion pieces you write when you're a journalist, the more you open yourself up to being like, well, why are we listening to him?
Exactly, yeah. No, but you've done very well in that area, and hats off to you.
For sure. Another one for you, Sam. So in the industry, obviously a lot of journalists out there all, doing the same job. Got yourself, Tom Brown, Damien Barrett, John Ralph, those names there. I'm curious to know, is there a bit of a competitive edge between you journalists, wanting to break the news first, is there a bit of, bit of rivalry per se, or?
I think there's always a natural competitive edge to all of us. We wouldn't be
human nature.
That's right.
It's footy, yeah.
Footy, yeah. But to be honest, I love when other journos get really good stories because, to be honest, I reckon it's better for our industry. I can understand, and with social media the way it is, particularly Twitter and Instagram, clickbait has never been more in your face, and it's never been
crazy.
If you guys see a story that's clearly rubbish, right, and you click on it, you're like, I just wasted 15 seconds. Why did I click on this rubbish? It's clearly just clickbait. The natural reaction of most fans has been like, well, where has journalism got to? And then you start sort of painting all of us with the same brush, which is human nature and it's natural. And I would do the same thing. So to answer your question, the more people that report and write and televise and broadcast good, meaningful stories, the better, because it improves us all as an industry. So, yeah, if Tommy Brown or Tom Morris or one of those guys gets a really good story, my first reaction is usually great, good on him. There'll always be a little bit being like, I wish I had that, or I should have been across it. What was I doing not making phone calls about that? Mm-hmm. That's the natural competition between us. But the more that we all report good stories, the better it is for everyone, I think.
For sure. Great.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because the amount of bullshit out there, it can be detrimental to the whole industry. So
yeah, and it's getting worse, and it gives us bad reputations, not just with fans, but the most important cohort out there is the players.
Exactly right, and you don't want to bad rap the players because that's where you get your information from.
Yeah. The players. There's no game without the players. There's a game without us, right. Even though some of us would like to say that there's not because the media pumps in so much money, which we do. But there'd be a game without us, right? There's no game without the players.
Exactly. So, Sam, how do you get access to trade rumors? Who exactly do you talk to? Do you go straight to the player? Do you go to the manager? How do you do it?
You want the recipe to the secret herbs and spices?
You don't have to give us a step-by-step recipe. Just give us the overview or
give us the menu.
Yeah, just give us the menu. That's it. Give us the menu.
Yeah,
don't worry about the recipe.
Yeah, it's one of those. Story can come from anywhere. Is the real answer. A story can come from a player. A story can come from a coach, from a masseuse inside a club. A story, as much as you won't be willing to believe me, can come from the postman, can come from a hairdresser. Everyone knows someone who knows someone. Yeah,
but I wouldn't say the postman or the hairdresser is a reliable source, Sam.
Yeah, no, you're right. So that's the point. The point is to how do you then check that information and how do you it? So that's the hardest thing. So it's very rare that someone would give you a story that you're ringing up and someone says, this is happening, and you just go with it. Like, there might be 1 in 100 of those because the person that you're talking to is so high up or so in the know that you're just like, I back them, I'm going with it.
Yeah.
I know that no one else is going to confirm it. Let's go. But that's 1% of the time, maybe even less. The majority of the time, you get a morsel of information and then you have to go to someone else and try to build on it, and someone else and try to build on it, and someone else, until you've got a bigger picture that can't be refuted.
If everyone's saying the same thing, I guess, then it's more likely to be correct. You know what I mean? Yeah,
but then then there's sometimes that you talk to 3 different people and they've all got the same bit of information from the same person, and so you think that you're getting it confirmed by 3 people, but really it's the same bit of information. The hard stuff though with trades is that 90% of it is speculation. Now, we don't know. People, we like to think that we know, right? We like to sell that we know, but we don't.
Yeah.
It's the big stories that for sure in trade. So Joe Danaher has nominated Brisbane. That is a fact. We can go with that. What happens after that? What happens as a trade? What happens, with the money that he gets? That's all speculation, and you guys decide who you listen to. But you've got to build your stuff around facts. Like Mitch McGovern was unhappy at Adelaide in March. He was always going to leave. That's fact. He was trying to get out. He was talking to other clubs. So, and then there's the lower end of stuff. Like Collingwood are interested in getting Jack Gunston. Okay, What does that mean? Does that mean he's going there? Does that mean he's not? What picks have they got? Who's spoken to him? Has Nathan Buckley reached out to him? It's easy. You can link any player with any club, really, if you wanted to in a trade.
Mm.
The key bit of information is certifying what are the facts surrounding it. Who's made contact with who? Has someone had a coffee with someone? Has someone reached out? Has there been a contract offer made? They're the things that I think you should be able to know or should be able to report in order to bring more facts to a story.
Alrighty.
Well,
Sam McCLURE, thanks for joining us on the bench, mate. That wraps it up for today. All
really
the best.
Appreciate it, guys.
You sitting down. Cheers.
Thanks, mate.
All the best.
Cheers,
Thanks.
Sam. Have a good one.